Well, to everybody who is joining us online, thank you very much. Settle in, get yourself something to drink. The crowd here has already got something. To everybody who's joined us here, welcome to the launch of Networking for Introverts by Helen Nicholson. Please welcome Helen Nicholson. Sometimes at a conference you'll say, our next speaker needs no introduction. And probably Helen doesn't, but let's do it anyway. No, let's do this. My name is Graeme, for those who don't know, Graeme Codrington. I think for a number of years I was always introduced as the only male tribe member of the networking. I'm not sure that's entirely true now. I hope it isn't. We're trying to find the few other good men around. But it's been great to be Helen's friend for over 20 years. We've been friends. We've been in mentor groups. We've learnt from each other, with each other. We've made money together. We've lost money together. And it's just wonderful. And thanks, Helen, for the honor of being here and introducing your book to the world. Helen Nicholson, as most of you know, is just an amazing businesswoman. Let's start with that. She's way more than that, but on a business side, she's been running the networking company for almost as long as I've known you, about 18 years now. Has won multiple awards, from Businesswomen's Awards and Educator Awards and Speakers Awards, and her passion, more than anything else, is empowering people, especially empowering women. But anybody else is invited, all the others, and just helping them to find out who they really are, become the best that they can be. And that's not just what she does for a living, that's who she is as a person. And it's wonderful to see her taking some of what she's learnt over the years, especially from her, well, I can say this, I don't know if she would, but the world's best women's development program. And there are many people here who are part of that and have been on it, and to take some of the lessons that she's learned from that and package it in a way that the rest of us can access. And of course, the topic, as you know, is now networking. Maybe if Helen's known for anything in particular, it's this issue of networking. And that's where I first met her, where about 22 years ago, she convinced one of the world's greatest introverts that networking was going to be an important life skill. And she was 100% correct. The second chapter of this book talks about this as a superpower for your career. And absolutely, any success I've had, I will trace it back to networking. So this book's taken a long time to get down on paper because you've known a lot of this stuff for a long time. So, no introduction required, right? But now you know. Now you know. So, Helen, welcome to your book launch.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for coming. Hey, how cool is this? I'm very honoured to have you all.
So, we're going to get to the book and the contents of the book in a little while. I know people would be interested in why it's going to be worth reading. And the people here who are too schnoop to buy it, we're not going to give them all the insights. You have to buy the book and read it, right? That's the whole point. But we'll give them some tips a little bit later. But let's go, first of all, behind the scenes of an author. It's quite a daunting thing to write a book. I think a lot of people think they've got a book inside them. Some people try and write it. You've written a few now. Why this book? Why do you think the world needs it? I know you don't waste your time and waste your effort. You didn't just do it because you had nothing else to do. 10 years from now, if somebody has read the book in 2024, and then they meet you in 10 years and they tell you what the book did for them and their world, what do you hope they'll say to you?
I hope that they will say that the book has given them the confidence and the skills, because I think it's a confidence and a competence issue, the skill of connecting and networking. I don't think it's one without the other. And I think that I've tried hard to address both of those issues in the book. And I always, in our leadership development work over the last kind of 20 years, we've had a lot of introverts on our programs. And a lot of them have come up to me after a course and they've said, I feel that my value is not recognized in the world. I feel that my career is going around in circles. And my heart has kind of gone out to them because these are these amazingly talented, phenomenal people who are not seen in often the corporate world. And for that reason, I had a hunch 10 years ago that introverts were better networkers than extroverts. Because when I studied good networking, the two skills that came up very powerfully are listening and following up. And introverts are very good at both of those skills, listening and following up. Whereas extroverts, and I speak as an extrovert, is listening. Often extroverts are too busy talking about their favorite subject, which is often themselves. And secondly, the extroverts get energized by the interaction. So you'll meet interesting people here, and then they promise to link in with you or follow up, and you never hear from them again. So those two skills, so I had this hunch that was the case. And then since COVID, I think everyone became more introverted, even extroverts. And what is interesting, 73% of the world's population are ambiverts. So they sit in the middle. So it can be largely job dependent or mood dependent, whatever it is. So the pure introverts and extroverts only comprise 17% on either side of that. But I think there are a lot of factors that influence that. And COVID was one of those big factors. We almost, it's like going to gym, or you haven't been to gym for a while and you get stiff. I think our social muscles became stiff. And I still see it with people when they go to functions and they say to me, it's like, I'd rather stay at home. It's just easier. So the fact that everyone came here tonight, like, well done, like, whoop, whoop. And for all of those sitting in your pajamas at home, we welcome you too. But I think, so that was the reason why I decided to write the book. I wanted a manual, A to Z, that someone can pick up, but it's also not just for introverts. It's also for extroverts to understand introverts better. And I gained huge insight with the research, and I interviewed 253 introverts over the last 4 years in focus groups, and I divided them into two groups. One was the introverts who I saw as very successful business people, and then the other group were people that felt that they were not seen in their careers. So I took both of those kind of research projects and amalgamated the data and then looked at what the skill set was and what were the skills that they needed on both sides.
So you did a whole lot of research, chatted 250-something people that you chatted to, and then give us a little bit of an insight into the process then of writing. So you've got 2+ decades of networking experience. You've now got this 10-year-old hunch that maybe introverts are better at it than others. You've then gone out and you've interviewed 253 people. You've got all this data floating around. How does that end up in a book?
So I have had a life philosophy: when the going gets tough, the tough go to spas, as in SPAS. And I also believe that you can amalgamate going to spas with book writing. So I've got book writing rituals. So some of you may have read my previous book, Mindfulness, and I started these writing rituals with that previous book. So I would go to Brookdale, which is a spa in the KZN Midlands, and I've got very specific writing rituals. So I go there for a week, from Sunday to Saturday. I go for a walk in the morning, and I don't speak to anyone. They bring me my breakfast in my room. I write for 2 hours. Then I go to the nearby Seattle, because you're not allowed coffee at Brookdale, but I'm a rule breaker. So I go out to the nearest Seattle. I go and get a cappuccino. I come back and I write for another 2 hours. I have lunch, and then I have spa treatments in the afternoon. And I do that for 6 days. So I did that twice. And I can't write properly in Joburg, like in my office, in my desk. I admire people who can, but for me, I need it to be away. And it gives me, and also not speak to anyone. So there's very bad cell phone reception there. So I just completely cut off and I surround myself with books and research and, what I want to, and then it starts to, and then I wake up in the morning and I go, okay, today is going to be the coffee stain chapter. And then the next day is going to be the relevancy quotient chapter. And then I never edit while I'm there. I just dump. I just write. And I write freehand. I don't type. And then when I come back to Joburg, it gets transcribed, and then the editing process starts. So, and this book was edited 19 times. So it's for all the people who helped do that. Wendy Nagel over there, thank you. So yeah, I think that's really how it happens. But I do realize it's like birthing a child. I have 2 children, and I've written 4 books. This is my 4th one, and it feels like I've got 6 children. So it's not something you just do. It's something, and you've got to be committed to the outcome.
So which of the 6 children is the most problematic?
I'm not answering
No,
that
no,
question.
don't. Definitely not. Talking of problematic, let's ask that. Which chapter did you have to fight with the most? Which chapter did you struggle with, and why? Or concept, even if it didn't maybe come down into a chapter?
There wasn't. It really flowed. There wasn't. It's more the discipline of just getting it. Because what I've realized, and if any of you follow me on social media, people have said to me, like, but you wrote about like 4 months ago that the book was done. Like, why does it take from 4 months to now, only at the end of July, for this book? Because it's actually, I've realized the writing of the book is actually the easy part. It's the other stuff. It's the typesetting. And as a team, and Sheena and Caitlin and Liv and all the amazing people who work in our business, they typeset it, because I'm over 50. I'm not doing like little lightweight books. I'm doing a heavyweight book, and you can tell it actually weighs a lot, because I've poured my life's work into this, and I'm 54. So you if I was 24, then maybe it would be thinner because I'd know less stuff, and I'd like to think like I've learned some stuff. So and I wanted to share it.
But so also, while we're talking typesetting, tell us about the style. If you haven't had a chance to get one in your hands, they are available at the back at normal retail prices. But every page, you've got your content, and we'll get to that in a second. But then on the right-hand page, you've got memes and quotes. My favorite one was on page 53. Where, I don't even have to look it up, I know it. It's a little pie chart that says how introverts make friends. And the tiny little sliver at the top is they don't. And the rest of the pie chart is an extrovert found them, adopted them, and liked them. That pretty much sums it up. That it is absolute scientific fact in that graph. So how did you put all of that together? Because that must have been a little bit of fun as well.
No, I really had a lot of fun with that, because those of you who know our work, I love quotes. We bring out a calendar every year that's got quotes for every month. And for me, quotes have always inspired me. I've got a little notice board when I brush my teeth every morning, and every week my quotes change, because quotes speak to me. They inspire me, especially when you're having a bad day. They give you a unique way of looking at things. And memes, I think, do the same. And I started following a whole lot of Instagram pages on introvert memes. And then I started to laugh every time I opened them. So I thought I want to incorporate, because otherwise it can be quite a serious topic. And I thought I want to put the research, the data, the tools, the heavy stuff, but I want to lighten it up with the memes and the quotes and the more light-hearted part of being an introvert.
And it really is. And it's a lovely book to read, because you're getting the solid data and research coming at you every time you turn a page, with just a little bit of inspiration or a smile or something at the same time. Talking about the data and the solid thing, I think every time you and I have had coffee for maybe the last year, you've said, Graeme, you have to understand how the brain works. There's neuroscience for introverts, but you said we have to wait for the book, that you wouldn't tell me what I'm supposed to know about my own brain. But apparently extroverts and introverts, there's brain science here, right?
No, and if you were to say to me what has been the biggest epiphany about researching this book, that was it. So introverts and extroverts have got different brains. They are not, their brain science, so it's not a choice. Because I think extroverts often will say to an introvert, kind of get over yourself, just come to the party, or, just stay later. And when they want to go home, and the brain science behind it is this. So we have dopamine in our brain. We have dopamine receptors. Dopamine is your feel-good chemical in your brain. That's what keeps us addicted to social media. Because every time you have a little dopamine when someone likes or shares your post, you get a little rush. So introverts have got more dopamine receptors in their brain than extroverts. Extroverts have got less. So that means when an introvert goes to a party, because they've got more dopamine receptors, those dopamine receptors get full more easily because then they reach their threshold. And then they want to go home because they've had enough. And I'm married to an introvert. My husband at the back there.
He's not going to wave. He's not going to wave.
So, and we had a case in point. In fact, at Joss's party last year, Michael, as an introvert, he had a very social day that day. So we went to the party, and he stayed for an hour, and he goes, I'm socialed out. And it was actually at that time that I was doing this research. And previously, I would have gotten annoyed with him because I would have been like, we only just arrived at this party, and I'm having great fun. Because as the extrovert, I've got less dopamine receptors, so my dopamine needs to be filled because I wasn't going to leave at 9 o'clock because my dopamine wasn't full yet. So I said to him, okay, great, you go home, I'm staying. And we did that, and it gave us great insight into each other as an introvert-extrovert couple. And for me, that compassion that I think we need to feel for introverts was very profound. And so I think for those of you who do consider yourself more introverted here, or you have introverts in your teams, know that there is this brain science.
So let's get in then to some of the content. So you've done this research, you've had these insights, you're packaging it now. In fact, don't you like hearing an author read from their book? Can we get you to read something? I've got a suggestion. This might help. It's right near the beginning. That's only because you only sent me the book yesterday and I haven't got to the second half. But I thought we could go right to the beginning. Have you got your glasses? So from the bottom there of page 14. So this, just in case, introverts, extroverts who haven't quite got the definitions and that in your head. This is now just to position it in the book. So we write at the introduction and we're now learning what are the definitions, but then what is it that people misunderstand? So we haven't got to the brain science yet, but you know that that's coming. But it's like when you look at an introvert and you say, oh, they're just shy. Why don't you just get some confidence? It's more than that. So, Helen, Networking for Introverts, page 14, the author.
Page 14, yes. So introverts' energy source. Introverts often recharge and gather energy from spending time alone or in low stimulation environments. Large social gatherings or prolonged interactions can be draining for them. They typically prefer time alone or one-on-one interactions and tend to be more reserved or reflective. The misperceptions. Being an introvert doesn't necessarily mean one is shy or socially anxious. And that's really important because a lot of people think introverts are shy. What came out very powerfully in my research is that an introvert, when they're passionate about a certain subject, they can be very verbal. They've got lots of stuff to say about it.
Just read. Okay. Just read. The book is very good. Just read it.
It's more about where they draw their energy from. Some introverts can be quite outgoing in the right circumstance, especially when they're talking about something they're passionate about. You see, I was going to say that. Amazing. Introverts gravitate towards the inner world of thought and feeling. They are experts at immersing themselves in their work and prefer to concentrate on one task at a time. They need to process what's going on around them and replenish their energy levels by spending much needed time alone. Author Jonathan Rauch, a self-confessed introvert, sums it up perfectly. Introverts are people who find other people tiring, he writes. Extroverts are energized by people and wilt and fade when they're alone. For introverts, to be alone with our thoughts is as restorative as sleeping, as nourishing as eating. In some ways, introverts are better equipped to connect with people. For one, they despise superficial small talk, preferring to have deeper, more meaningful one-on-one encounters. As a result, they may have fewer friendships than extroverts, but they are very close to the people they count as friends. It's difficult for an extrovert to understand an introvert. Extroverts have little or no grasp of introversion. They assume that company, especially their own, is always welcome. They assume that company, especially their own, is always welcome. They cannot imagine why someone would need to be alone. They often take umbrage at the suggestion, says education expert Jill Diaburis. Extroverts see introversion as something that needs to be fixed. Just ask anyone who's ever been coaxed to come out of their shell, been given a pitting look while sitting alone in a public space, been asked whether they are depressed, or being coerced into joining a group activity. Instead of trying to be more extroverted, my recommendation is to lean in and embrace the skills that come naturally to you, such as listening. Introverts are typically the friend or colleague you can call when you're upset or you have good news to share.
Introverts, do you feel seen? I saw all the introverts going, yes, at last somebody understands. And so if I can ask you to dip maybe into the parts of the book I haven't read yet, can you give us your top 3 tips? So all the introverts are now, they know you know them. What should they do then? Top 3 tips from the book without giving too much away.
So one of the biggest ones is to lean into your strengths. If I had to go around in this room and I had to ask all of you very quickly, name your top 5 strengths, right here, right now, a lot of you would have difficulty doing that. If I asked you to name your top 5 weaknesses, everyone will be able to roll those off because we are more in touch with our weaknesses than we are with our strengths. So number 1 is a good personal brand is built around your strengths, not your weaknesses. And that's I spend 60% of the book on personal branding because if people get what's their secret sauce, what makes me different to Margie? We could be doing the same job. We could be working at the same company. We've got exactly the same job description, but there's something that makes her different to me, and it's that secret sauce of you. And the more you can excavate that and find that out in who you are. So leaning into your natural strengths, not trying to become someone who you're not. So that's number 1. Number 2 is to become a better storyteller. In all the research that I did, the introverts who had leveraged their powers and had really taken off in their careers, they were all good storytellers. And they know how to influence people when they are chatting. So in other words, they don't like to chat a lot. And at events, and in fact, Joni Petty over there, she gave me this great tip, which I shared, was if you're an introvert and you go to an event, do it quickly. You've got to be in and out because your energy, remember your dopamine receptors and your energy is limited and finite. So and decide you're going to meet 2 new people that night. So I really challenge all of you. Hopefully you met 2 people kind of while you were here, but arrive at an event, meet 2 new people, connect deeply with them, and then follow up. So, it's leverage your strengths, become a better storyteller. And I've got a whole chapter on storytelling about how to have a storytelling arc when you are trying to make more impact with the people that you are dealing with. And because then you influence them more powerfully.
Final question from me, and then we're going to give you an opportunity to ask questions. Only good questions, please. Okay, no bad questions. But my question is, your mindfulness book felt like a very personal book. It felt like it came from a very deep place, and maybe I'm telling on myself. Maybe that book was just amazing. You and I have chatted about this. It met me at a moment in my life that was just perfect. And so maybe it's me, not you, but I'm sensing in what I've read so far of this, that you are in this book, but you're more in this book now as an educator and a guide and even a mentor to help people. That's what I'm feeling. But you are in this book. How did you make the decision about which parts of you shared? Because books can be self-indulgent, and I've read a few of them, and but you've managed to get the balance from what I can see right. But so you've shared some of your stories. You've obviously shared some of the stories of the people you interviewed. How did you get that balance of making it a textbook, an A to Z, an encyclopedia, but also just so personal?
So I'm very honored to have my parents here tonight. So my mom and my dad. So I grew up in Edenvale on the East Rand. Yay, East Rand. And I'm the oldest of 4 children. My mother is a retired school teacher, and my dad is a retired commercial artist, so pre-graphic design. My parents were not natural networkers. They were not the people who knew people, and there are people, and I realized that when I went to school. So I was lucky enough to go to Holy Rosary Convent in Edenvale, and when I arrived at school, there was a friend of mine who, her father had been to one of those boys' schools where the boys actively help each other at schools. And my parents had not been to schools like that. And her father is now in his late 80s and still leverages those networks that he had from school. And it was then that I saw the power that those networks had. And we, as a family, we had a lot of love and a lot of independence, but my parents also were not from parents who necessarily knew people who knew people. And I realized that can often be a handed down trait. But I think what's exciting about this book is that I've realized anyone can learn it. It's not, so there are some families where it's passed down, but it is a tangible skill set. And this all kind of came to a halt or came to a head for me was in 1990. So I'm 54. 1990, I was 20. I was studying at Wits. I got a student loan to study to be an accountant. And I was at the end of my 3rd year. And me and a university school friend decided to go backpacking through Zim and Malawi. And in Zim, we knew some people if things went wrong. But in Malawi, we didn't know anyone. And we had what ended up being one of the scariest travel experiences I've ever had. Because here we were, 2 20-year-olds, and you'll see there's a picture of me waiting in a Malawian bus stop in a very bad hairstyle. I clearly was not spending a lot of money on hairdressers at that time in my life. And we, in Malawi, especially in the rural areas, there was a traveling bank. Because bearing in mind, in 1990, there were no cell phones. We had no credit cards because we weren't working. We were still full-time students. And we missed the traveling bank, so we couldn't exchange currency. And just out of interest, we were away for 8 weeks, and the whole trip cost 600 Rand, just to give you an idea of how we roughed it. We caught local transport, we stayed in backpackers' lodges, and we arrived in Blantyre, and we'd missed the traveling bank, and we had no money, 0. So, and I still actually have ripples of terror that go through my body because it was a very scary traveling experience. We didn't speak the language, no cell phones, no credit cards, and we didn't know anyone. So we arrived at this backpacker's lodge, and the owner, I think, could see how terrified we were. And he said to us, "You're allowed 1 landline phone call." And I think it's probably quite similarly if you're in jail, and you're allowed your 1 phone call. You've got to think very carefully about who you're going to phone. So I knew that I couldn't phone my parents because they'd be sympathetic, but they didn't have networks in Malawi. So I phoned that school friend's father who had networks because he imported and exported stuff into Africa. And I remember within 1 hour of that phone call, $50 in cash was delivered to the backpackers lodge. And that was my first eureka moment that when you know people who know people, then you can solve most of life's problems. So whether it's personal, whether it's professional, it's about who do you pick up the phone and phone when you're in a crisis. And that was my first inkling that this is a powerful way to run your life. And fast forward 34 years later, that was a real landmark moment in me starting the network company, because then I realized this was a skill that could be learned. And we've spent our life training people on the skill. And it gives me, there's nothing that makes me happier is when I see someone with a need and I know someone else can sort out that need, and it's 1 + 1 = 3. And it's like, yes. Because that's proper networking and connecting. I even had a matchmaking idea for some people tonight, but I will talk about that later.
Look, if Helen tells you to speak to somebody, do it. Do it. Some of you know what I'm talking about. Right, let's get a mic into the audience. Hopefully there's a few good questions from the audience. We've got about another 10, 15 minutes. Who wants to ask something? Who wants to know something? At the back there? Sipiwe. Can we just use the mic just for the live stream? Thank you very much. Thanks, Sipiwe.
We are now intimidated by the facilitator telling us to ask only good questions.
I'm watching you, Sipiwe. I'm watching you.
Helen, the role of embracing discomfort in discovering good relationships, what's your view? Because as an introvert, you tend to lean towards people that you've been walking a journey with for a while. You know them, you know the authenticity, the genuineness, but it just seems like once in a while you just have to embrace that discomfort. Any comment?
Yes, you do need to embrace the discomfort, because one of the things is a network's power lies in its diversity. And the problem with networks is they become more linear as we get older. So if your network comprises people in the same industry as you, the same age as you, same gender as you, same color as you, same country as you, it's not an interesting network, because then you've just got clones of you. And that's why, I get down and dirty in the book, because I give you some tips on how to break into a conversation. Because if you go to an event and you don't break into at least one conversation, then all you're doing is recycling your network, and then it's like round and round. And that's not very interesting. And I think that as the world is changing, there's that fascinating Google study that I'm sure a lot of you know about, is where they studied people over kind of 36 years, and they looked at what is the biggest determinant of happiness. And without exception, it is the depth and the quality of your relationships. So, if you think about it, the depth and quality of your relationships determines your longevity and your happiness, and then our networks get less or more linear as we get older, because often people will just go to work and then they go home and watch Netflix. And that's why they've got to actually, and I think Graeme and I, when we were preparing for this session, we both spoke about the intentionality. You've got to put some intentionality and strategic thinking into the skill. Think about where are your gaps. Where are the people that I don't know anyone? If I don't know any Harley Davidson riders, do I feel that they are going to be beneficial in my network? And maybe, what are the skill sets I'm lacking? Because a network, when it works at its peak, is you focusing in on your strengths, and then you have a network of people who represent your weaknesses. And then you're all operating, in many ways, I think networking is deeply spiritual. It's you fulfilling the purpose that you were put on this earth to do.
Brilliant. Here we go. Kim? Where was that microphone? Yep, coming across there.
Thanks very much. Helen, we met many, many years ago. I don't even think you remember, from the Businesswomen's Association. Can you tell us a story about one person that made the biggest impact in your early career?
As an introvert or just anyone?
Anyone.
That is an interesting question.
Cheers. While I think of the answer, just for the microphone, next question, who would like to do? We're not going to take it now, but just get the microphone and then wait for my cue. Right.
I think, I studied accounting, and I knew I didn't want to do that, but I didn't know what else I wanted to do. And a lot of people come to me when they're having crises around their personal brands. They're at a crossroads in their careers. And a lot of people who come in our leadership programs are often at that place. And I reflect back when I was at that crossroads, I followed my envy. And it's something I've passed on to other people. Look around at your friends, look around at what they do. And the friend of mine who I was at varsity with and is the godmother to my children, she was in training. And I remember seeing her standing up and training other people. And I was like, that's what I want to do. And if you think back, I was debating captain at school. I was always talking. You know, my father says the first thing he ever saw about me was my big mouth. And so there's a theme of talking, you know, in my career. So I think that seeing her in that role, and now I was like, that's what I want to do. And then you follow that. And I always say to people, when you want to make a career transition, it's so important because follow your envy and then build your network where you want to go. Because that's what I did. Because at that stage, I was doing auditing. And I was a contract cost accountant. I mean, can you actually believe it? It was too dreadful for words. And then, but I can read financials, you know, which is very useful. But I went, I was like, that. And then I started building a network in that space. And that's where networking becomes very powerful because they are then become your guides as to help you through that transition.
Wow. Okay. So Helen,
Hi.
I
Want to turn around so everyone can see you?
just a quick one. What's your advice to introverts? Because I find that society has made introversion like they've put a stigma on introversion. Like if you are an introvert, there must be something wrong with you. So I've come across a lot of introverts in my line of work who deny that they're introverts. And so, and as you engage, you realize that this person is an introvert. But because society has put the stigma, they then deny. Your advice.
So if we come back to the brain again, is there something called the pinball brain? So did any of you ever play pinball? You know that arcade game where the ball kind of pings around on a board?
I don't know what you're doing with your hands, but you didn't play pinball.
No, you can tell. Hey, I was the
Anyway,
Pac-Man
yeah.
person.
This is what you wanted to do. Anyway, keep going.
So introverts, so we all have a pinball brain. So if you hear something or you see something, it comes into your brain and it goes ding, 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 ding through the different centers of your brain, and then it will kind of pop out as to your thought about that thing. Introverts have got a pinball brain that takes longer to happen. So as an extrovert, my stimulus arrives and it goes ding, 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 and then we spit it out. And that's why extroverts are often seen as being quick thinkers. And they're celebrated in the corporate world, to your point. And the world, in many ways, is constructed for extroverts. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to write this book, is to give introverts the skills and the confidence, but also to give extroverts that understanding of that pinball brain, is that because it came out in my research that a lot of people think of the clever thing to say if they're an introvert after the meeting has already finished. And they'll think about when they've left the conference, and then they thought of, I should have said that. And part of my reason for writing this was to realize that if you're a leader or you know introverts, to circle back to them and say to them, you know, do you have any further thoughts about what we discussed at the meeting? Because often, because their thought process happened more deeply, often they've got a much richer contribution than the extrovert who just popped it out, you know, and looked like the person who knew everything. And I think it's so important to celebrate the strengths of both.
What you've just said there, Helen, is an important thing to remember as you think about whether the book is worth reading. It's not just introverts who should read it. In fact, what I'm guessing is going to happen is the introverts will buy it, quickly read it, and then hand it out. Because it's about, if you're a manager, a partner, a parent, a child maybe, where you want people to say, just help me be my best, right? And helping me be my best, to your point, is not help me be more of an extrovert. It's help me be more of an introvert and help me lean into some of the strengths that introverts have. So the book is for everybody, not just introverts. Another question here.
Hi, Helen. Hi. There's been a lovely conversation. I have always been under the impression that introversion and extroversion is like a spectrum. It's not two ends. So I want to ask more about the brain science, because if I believe like personality tests I've taken over my career, I've shifted from being an extreme extrovert to more, I'm probably still an extrovert, but more heading towards introversion. So I'm just curious, like, are they two separate things, or do we exist on a spectrum between the two?
So thank you, Mariana. We do exist on a spectrum. So say, for example, and we all become more introverted as we get older. Whether you are a raging extrovert or a raging introvert, you become extra as you get older, kind of from about like 45, 50. So as an extrovert, if I've had a very social week and I've spoken a lot and I've been at events or I've done training work, then I want to have a very quiet weekend, because I need time to refill. Whereas when I was 25, I didn't need that same time. So I think there are a whole lot of factors that come into play: menopause, andropause, getting older, COVID, all of those. But there's definitely a spectrum. But one of the things I think is the most powerful thing is to recognize where you are on that spectrum and to give yourself permission and compassion to say that I've had that and now I'm not going to, and put in boundaries and say no, that I actually can't go to this event, and all of the people who love you and appreciate you will understand that.
Yeah. All the introverts are clapping. I mean, I'm an off-the-chart introvert. I'm a 100% introvert. And people maybe have never understood that, because you see somebody who spends their life on a stage or in front of people. But it's the book does bring this out. A lot of it is about energy, right? So it's not about ability or confidence. So my day today, when Helen asked me many weeks ago, would you come and interview me and MC the launch event, I literally put a line through my whole day, because I knew if I needed to do what I had to do for 45 minutes, which is now nearly finished, I needed, and so literally this morning, the team was desperate to get a little bit of information from me, and I was just not accessible to anybody this morning. Phone off. I went for a run in the Modderfontein Reserve. I didn't see another human being for 4 hours, phone off. And that was the only way that I could develop the energy required to do this. So when you know yourself, so many people are on the spectrum in between. I know where I am, but you've got to then live that truth wherever you find yourself on it. And the book's going to help us to do that. Is there one more? Let's take one more question. And then we're not running away, so there'll be an opportunity to chat further to each other and to Helen. The mic's coming around, which is why I'm babbling a little bit, giving them a chance to get it to you. Right, question.
Thank you so much. So when I was a younger man, I used to run TED Talks, right? And as fun, as great as that was, most people didn't know that I was the actual founder, because I was working with an extrovert. And it makes you kind of feel insecure most of the time. And so that's something I'm trying to get around. How do you get over that insecurity of working with an extrovert as an introvert?
I think coming back to that earlier point about realizing how valuable your strengths are, packaging that value, and as you package that value and focus in on the secret source of you, that's you. That's the biggest gift that you have to bring to the world. And I always think that self-confidence comes when you honor your purpose. that we were all put on this earth for a purpose. And when we know that, then I think that gives you great confidence. So your job as a human being is to excavate what is that purpose that you were put on this earth to, and that gives you the confidence then to deal with any extrovert.
Thank you.
Viva.
Now, I know, Helen, there's always a whole host, a tribe of people to thank. We're not going to spend time doing that now because I know you will do that in special ways for each different person. But there is one group of people that I think are worth thanking publicly because I spoke to them earlier. It's the manager and the staff here at Exclusive Books. Not everybody gets to launch their book at Exclusive Books, but they seem quite traumatized. And they wouldn't tell me why, but I'm going to ask you, like, how did you get to launch your book
Because
at
I
Exclusive
stalked
Books?
Derek.
Tell us the
poor
story
man,
properly. Tell us the story properly.
So, and it is a great networking story. So I come to this Exclusive Books and the Seattle at 7 o'clock in the morning on Sundays, most mornings. And I'm in my pajamas. I do put on a coat and I put on a beanie. So I'm very incognito. And the reason why I come here is I buy the Financial Times because we like reading that on a Sunday, and we like Seattle coffee. So I adore my amazing Seattle baristas, Bosch and team. And so Derek is the manager here. And I had heard, because he had been very supportive of my mindfulness book when he'd been the Sandton City Exclusive Books manager. So I'd heard that he was moving here. So anyway, so I'm here at 7 o'clock in my pajamas with my beanie, and I see this man walking around who looks like a manager guy, but he's got his dustbuster. And I'm very impressed that at 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning, he is vacuuming the Exclusive Books Hyde Park branch. And I went up to him and I said, "Are you Derek?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "I just want to say thank you for supporting my previous book because I think you're amazing." And I said, "And I would love, my fantasy is to have a launch here." And here we all are. And it was because of a networking moment where I pushed myself because I wasn't really feeling the most confident person in my pajamas with my beanie at 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning. But he was incredibly generous, and here we are. So
Thank you, Exclusive Books. Thank you very much. So if there's one more way we could thank Exclusive Books, and that's, of course, for you to buy the book tonight from Exclusive Books. They will be available at the back, and Helen will sit at the table and sign them if you buy them tonight. Please, on behalf of Exclusive Books, don't forget to pay for them. Okay, nobody's getting a freebie book here tonight. If Helen wanted to give you a freebie, she would have given it to you already. So please buy the book and pay for the book before you leave. That is important to say. Talking about booking, you're going to like what I'm about to do. No, you're not. You're going to be embarrassed. But I just want to say something. That those of you who are in the corporate world, those of you who've got teams where you think, you know what, some of the stuff we've heard tonight, I actually think that my teams would have value for this. The leaders in my companies would do that. This is unsolicited, and I won't take commission off of anything that happens. But seriously, don't just buy the book. Book Helen to come and do this with your team. You practice this, you do this, it becomes more comfortable, it becomes easier, people see how it works. And so I also believe that there's going to be merch. And I believe somebody left my merch at home, otherwise I would have been wearing a T-shirt.
do you see the where? Where's Sheena? Look, there's Liv
There we
over
go.
there.
There we go.
You
It says,
people.
"You people." I'm definitely going to buy one of those and wear it. My favorite T-shirt at the moment, which "you people" will replace, is, and I've had it now for 3 years. After this pandemic is over, I still don't want to meet for coffee. And that's a T-shirt that I wear out in public when I want to be left alone. Thank you so much for coming. Helen, final word to you.
So, really, thank you. Thank you, everyone online, for joining. Thank you to this tribe of amazing people who gathers at Exclusive Books in Hyde Park, because I've spent a lot of time editing this book here, so it feels like a whole full cycle moment. For the amazing people who kind of came from Seattle and Greenside, like, yeah, I know, hey? to CEOs of Wikipedia, to, we've got like an amazing array of phenomenal people in this room. And I'm just really grateful to you. I'm grateful for my team, for Caitlin, my daughter, who we are building this business together, and it's a big honor to do that with your daughter. To our amazing sound crews, thank you. To Derek, thank you. We've already said thank you to you, but just to say thank you again. And to my amazing husband, who is the eternal patient introvert. I always say there's no accident that my career took off as I met him. It was the two things happened alongside each other. And thank you, my babe. And I think to Sheena and to Liv. Where is Sheena? Okay. So Sheena is the person, it was her team that typeset this book, because we self-published, because my first book, they changed the title and changed my name or changed the cover. So I decided after that I was never going to be formally published. I want to be responsible for the look and the feel. So, and then lastly, to say thank you to Graeme. So can I give you a bottle of champers to say thank you? And yes, it really is an honor and a privilege to do this work, and it's so wonderful to see all your beautiful faces. So when a network becomes a tribe, or when a network works, it becomes a tribe, and I consider all of you tribe members, so thank you.